So I'm really going to talk more about kind of the art cross-science stuff at EVL rather than a real history of EVL, although those two get mixed together. Part of this is, in a sense, this is partially a rehearsal for a talk I'll be giving this Friday at Shimer College, where it's a place I have my undergraduate institution. And so I wanted to, among other things, check to see if I could, get through this talk in 45 minutes or how many slides I have to throw out. So this is a bit ahead. I'm also going to be talking, for people who don't know, the EVL activity started in 1973 is the date we set at it, and that's when Tom came to town and stayed at my place, and we started hatching at the invitation of a very forward-looking vice chancellor of research that wanted to develop kind of a short order media house for education. And so we hung out together and found out that we had so many things in common. We read the same comic books, and we drove motorcycles. And it was the beginning of this activity. EVL, by its name, really kind of started, I think, when Maxine came in 1979, where it transformed itself into something like the laboratory that you know now. But really, the art cross-science part of it has been going on for 40 years, and that's really a long time. And it's a joint, there was an electronic visualization program, which was a joint. Oh, the other caveat I want to say is, I'm going to be talking about EVL really in the time period when there were about a third of the research assistants were from the art department and 2/3 of the research assistants were from the engineering department. Because that's the period I really want to talk about it. And the lab has morphed some since then, but still actually holds on to many of the same values. It was the first program offering an MFA that was a formal collaboration of art and computer science. It's always hard to set first. The first to do this or first to do that. But when you have something like a program that ends up with a degree, you can actually make that claim. So it has a very early history in doing art cross-science stuff in a formal way. Now, during that time period, what EVL did was to deliver art intelligence to scientists and science technology to artists. And it systematically taught the artists the technology through cross-listed courses, and somewhat less systematically taught the computer scientists the art. But the important thing is the experience of artists in the lab was central to the success of EVL. It's one of the things that differentiated us from other laboratories and allowed us to go forward. So in 1969, I was invited to UIC's art department to bring computers into the art curriculum. Now, I don't know if there's anybody here hanging out from art departments. Are they still arguing about that now? Yes? They still are arguing about that now, right? So I have to check, because I haven't hung out in that department for a while. So it really was quite extraordinary that I was brought in 1969 to do that. And it's because of the Bauhaus lineage of the UIC art department. Now, the Bauhaus, of course, was a very influential educational organization in Germany that, among other things, kind of put together the art craft tradition and industrial production to form the concept of industrial design and to execute that. It was very influential. In part of the build-up to World War II, the Bauhaus was essentially dissolved and people escaped to the United States. And there's really two centers in the United States that could make claims to being the second-generation Bauhaus. One is the Center for Advanced Visual Studies at MIT, which had Kepisch there. And then the architecture component went to the Illinois Institute of Technology and formed the Institute of Design, which is another very arguably second-generation Bauhaus. Now, the University of Illinois was one of the instant universities created in the 60s, a nationwide movement to create urban-centered universities that essentially paralleled the quality of the agriculturally centered land-grant universities of the previous century, and it happened all over the country. And UIC was part of that movement. So they needed to populate an art department, and they got a lot of their faculty from the Institute of Design because they were in the same city, and they were you know, they were well trained and doing interesting things. So they formed the basis of the art department at UIC. And so I was invited essentially to create a synthesis of the cybernetic age, which was the jargon for kind of art cross science, or really the jargon for the most advanced science, create a synthesis of the cybernetic age and industrial design to produce a new synthesis, and which actually happened, arguably. It just took 30 years, and nobody imagined it would take 30 years, but it actually did happen because the computer science activities from computer-based activities have borged virtually everything in industrial design and graphic design, and with the possible exception of painting and sculpture, everything else in the art world has been borged by the computer, and I'm proud to be a part of that. 1973, Tom comes to UIC with the GRASS system, which was, partially was hired to answer to the mission of the university to be a high-quality urban university. And the concepts were to be able to have self-paced education because the output of the Chicago school system was spotty in the areas of science and mathematics. So they had the idea that they needed to really institute at the first-year level things that could bring people up to speed quickly. And Plato was one of those activities, an extremely advanced interactive computer-based teaching system. And our arm of it was to essentially be a short-order media production house to be able to produce simulations and educational videos for chemistry and the sciences. And that's what was the funding base there. So we did a series of live performances, and I'm going to play just because I can't resist, I'm going to play a little bit from these activities that were essentially in the mid-70s.
The next word you're going to see is Spiral 5. It was actually a combination of two systems, the analog image processor here and a computer graphics system developed by Tom DeFani. So let's jump to some tape about that system. Hiya, Tom.
A little Cook's tour of this laboratory in the chemistry department. We'll take you over the computer here. This single bay houses the graphics computer. And this down here, of course, is the PDP-1145 computer. Behind this panel is 28,000 words of memory.
28,000 words.
This here is the disk drive, the mass storage medium we use to hold pictures and macros and other
5 megabytes.
to run the graphics system.
Huge.
Up here is the A to D converters, which allow us to use dials and knobs and sliders and other things to control images. From the computer's memory go wires that go over to the vector general. And as you can see, the vector general is capable of putting up images in real time, rotating them around. What we do there is point TV cameras at them. Little TV cameras like this, which you can move around and center and get different parts of the screen. And then, because color is much more fun than black and white, we run cables over this way to a very colorful person, Sandin, and an image processor.
Spiral 5 was created by Tom DeFani, myself, Dan Sandin, and Mimi Chevetz doing sound. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, but what happened to it?
So what I'm going to play now is one of the work Spiral 5. And this was performed before a studio audience, and then recorded, and the sound was actually added later, or replaced later.